When historians speak about the Han Dynasty, they often focus on dates, emperors, reforms, and borders. They talk about expansion, wars, inventions, and philosophies. All of this is correct, and yet it completely misses the most important thing. The Han were not trying to build an empire. They were trying to solve a problem. That problem was simple to describe, but almost impossible to solve. How do you govern tens of millions of people across enormous distances without constant rebellion, without endless violence, and without collapsing every time a ruler fails? Before the Han, history offered few answers. Empires rose quickly and fell just as quickly. Power depended on charisma, fear, and divine claims. When one piece broke, everything collapsed. The Han understood something their predecessors did not. Power based on individuals is fragile. Power based on systems can survive. This realization did not come from theory, it came from trauma. Before the Han, China endured the brutal rule of the Qin dynasty. The Qin unified the land through extreme centralization, harsh laws, forced labor, and fear. The state functioned, but at an enormous human cost. When the Qin emperor died, the system imploded almost instantly. The lesson was clear: control alone is not stability. The founders of the Han did not reject Qin centralization entirely. That would have been impossible. Instead, they softened it. They replaced terror with legitimacy, fear with expectation, absolute authority with moral framing. This is where Confucian thought becomes essential, not as philosophy in the modern sense, but as political engineering. Confucius did not imagine utopia. He imagined order, a world where people knew their roles, understood expectations, and internalized responsibility. To modern ears, this sounds conservative. To ancient states, it was revolutionary. For the first time, morality became infrastructure. A Han official was not simply an agent of the emperor. He was supposed to be an example. His legitimacy came not only from appointment, but from conduct. This created a feedback loop. When officials behaved well, the system appeared just. When they failed, legitimacy eroded. This did not eliminate corruption. Nothing ever does, but it created a shared standard by which corruption could be recognized. That alone was a breakthrough. Another rarely discussed element of Han durability lies in how the state understood people. The Han did not see population as a vague mass. They counted it, recorded it, categorized it. Census taking was not symbolic, it was operational. Knowing how many people lived in a region meant knowing how much grain was needed, how many soldiers could be raised, how much labor could be extracted without collapse. This transformed governance from guesswork into calculation. Modern states do this automatically. In the ancient world, it was almost unheard of. The Han also understood something deeply uncomfortable. Rebellion does not begin with ideology, it begins with hunger. This is why agriculture occupied such a central role in Han policy. Land distribution, irrigation, storage, and transport were not secondary concerns, they were political tools. Grain reserves were maintained not only for famine relief, but to stabilize regions during unrest. Feeding people was cheaper than fighting them. Technology supported this logic. Iron tools increased productivity. Crop rotation improved yields. Infrastructure connected surplus regions to deficit ones. The state acted as a regulator, not just a collector. Again, this is not kindness, it is intelligence. One of the most profound Han innovations was the transformation of knowledge into state memory. Court historians recorded events relentlessly. Emperors were judged not only by contemporaries but by posterity. This created an unusual phenomenon. Rulers knew they were being watched by the future. History became accountability. This is why Han records are so detailed. Failures were not erased, they were documented. This allowed later generations to study collapse without mythologizing it. The goal was not glory, it was continuity. Even religion reflected this mindset. Unlike civilizations that placed gods at the center of political legitimacy, the Han treated heaven as a system of order rather than a personality. The mandate of heaven was not blind favor, it was conditional. A ruler who governed poorly could lose it. This idea is subtle but dangerous. It implies that power is not permanent, that legitimacy must be maintained, that failure has consequences. Few empires were willing to accept this. The Han were. Trade further strengthened the system. The Silk Road did not emerge accidentally. It was supported, protected, and taxed. The flow of goods brought wealth, but also information. The Han were aware of lands far beyond their borders. They knew they were not the center of the world. They were one system among many. This humility is rare in empires. When the Han finally fell, it was not because their system failed. It was because it was overwhelmed. Population pressure, elite corruption, factionalism, and military strain fractured the state. But here is the critical difference. When the Han collapsed, no one asked what China should become. They asked how to restore it. The idea of civilization had survived the empire. Later dynasties returned to Han models almost instinctively. Bureaucracy, records, Confucian ethics, administrative continuity. Even when rulers were foreign, the system absorbed them. This is perhaps the most unsettling realization of all. The Han did not build a civilization meant to last forever. They built one meant to return. That is why their influence still exists. Not as ruins, but as structure. Not as monuments, but as habits. The modern state, with its paperwork, civil service, moral rhetoric, and obsession with stability, owes far more to Han China than most people realize. The Han answer a question history rarely asks. What if collapse is not failure? What if survival means continuity, not permanence? History still holds many secrets, and some of the most important ones are not hidden in mystery, but in design.